I didn't know a lot of the beginning history. I knew that there was another shul, that it was a merger, and that it was like the next block over because there was a church there now. But the beginning information, I really didn't know that much. So Bobby and I will be able to fill you in when we were kids.
Okay. Were you?
I've got.
You remember? You were a member of Beth Abraham, not Beth Israel, correct?
Yes, my father. After Joe Sapowich, my father was vice president when Joe Sapowich was president.
Okay.
And Bobby's father, I can't remember if he was treasurer or secretary. Bobby can fill you in on what his dad's role was. Okay. But Bobby and his two siblings, the four of us grew up, and the Shapiro family. Are you familiar with Jeff Shapiro?
Yes, Jeff and there's his brother Noah and Faith.
Yeah, so they were another family that were, there weren't that many kids in the show when we were growing up. It was basically the Shapiros, the Weinribs, and myself. I'm an only.
Okay.
So,
about approximately what period of time are we talking about?
In the
60s?
I grew up in 58. I was named. When my mother always told the story that she made fake Mandelbrot before she had me. So if I was a boy, the Mandelbrot would be for the bris. Okay. And if I obviously turned out to be a girl, it was for my naming. So I was named in Beth Abraham. I was bat mitzvahed in Beth Abraham, and I had my ufruf.
Okay.
There. I didn't want my wedding there because I didn't want to go to another venue for the reception.
Okay, so you probably had it at a hotel or something?
No, we actually rented out Temple Sinai.
Oh, okay. You know something, Marilyn?
I don't know how long you've been in Buffalo.
Pardon me, Marilyn. I'm just going to go grab my phone just in case Bobby's trying to get a hold of me.
Okay, great.
I'll be right back.
Sure.
If I can find it. That's the question.
I know that feeling.
Yeah, I got it.
Great.
Okay. Looks like he hasn't tried. Well, hopefully he remembered. I sent the email this morning. Well, we'll see. Well, we'll continue talking. If he's here, he's here. If he's not, then I'll catch up with him later. I have talked to him before, about. I gave him a little questionnaire maybe 4 years ago because I was trying to put this archive together, and he gave me some information. So okay, so you asked me a question just as I was breaking away.
No? I'm not sure. Okay. So do you want me to ask?
Let me look at my notes. Okay, so you were there. So when you were there initially, you were Orthodox, correct?
Most of the people were not Orthodox that attended the synagogue. I never knew what the word Orthodox meant as a kid. I grew up traditional. We kept kosher at home. My father would have a steak in a restaurant, but that was the only trait that we would have. My mother would have fish.
Okay.
Whenever Shabbos started, that's when davening was. And so we were traditional. I never did homework on Shabbos. We watched TV. In the summertime, my father was in the wholesale souvenir business of Niagara Falls. So in the summertime, he had to go to work after shul, but every Shabbos morning, 9 o'clock, he was there. And we always had Kiddush. I've got notes, so I don't know if you want to keep asking me questions.
No, I'd rather, we'll go back to your notes later, but let's just kind of keep the flow going. So for like the Kiddush, for example, for the services, did you have problems getting a minyan?
At times, especially in Buffalo winters, sometimes we didn't start davening till 9:45 sometimes.
Okay.
Friday night sometimes was difficult in the winter time, but we always tried if Shabbos in Buffalo starts like at 4:30, that's when minyan started. We didn't have like the late service like the other temples did. So when Shabbos started, like at 5 o'clock, that's when we davened mincha, and then we did Kabbalat Shabbat.
Right. Hey, Bobby, welcome.
Hello, Marilyn.
Hey, Bobby, how are you, kiddo? Long time no see.
Look at this guy, this Florida guy with his
Whoa.
I see on Facebook,
sleeveless shirt there. Yeah.
Wow.
Where
So
are
good
you,
to
Marilyn?
see you.
You're still in the north.
I'm in Providence.
Providence. Okay. Yeah. You get the nor'easters, right?
Occasionally, not as bad as you guys though.
Well, actually, the last few years it hasn't been that bad. But anyway, so we were just kind of talking a little bit, Bobby, before you joined in. I'm just trying to get a flavor for what the synagogue was like during the times that you and Marilyn were growing up, and what your experiences were. And
We're all a year apart.
Yeah.
Bobby's sister was born in 57. I was born in 58. Bobby was born in 59.
No, I was born in November 58.
58. Oh, that's right. I forgot. Yes. I'm sorry, Bobby. And happy belated birthday.
You guys are babies.
Thank you.
So let's say in the 60s when you were growing up. So would you say that the congregation was in its heyday or was on the decline?
When we were growing up, I think we were still in the heyday. I mean, on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, the women's section was always full.
Okay, so you mentioned, I asked you about Orthodox, so you did have the mechitza was in full force.
Yeah, as you see it now, the mechitza as you see it now.
Right. I mean, it's not totally enclosed, but it's a separate section.
It was never enclosed. It was just we were just one step above, and women and men did not. Growing up, we always interacted. It was like not, God forbid you should talk to a man, and we always kissed the Torah. It was a very even flow. The kids we would run all over the place.
Yeah.
But so it was the service was Orthodox, but very few members when we were growing up, Bobby, correct me if I don't have stories right, weren't Orthodox.
No, it was like you'd see now at Sharet Tzedek maybe, or I mean the davening was pretty much what you'd see at Sharet Tzedek or maybe even Young Israel up to a point. But the mechitza is as you see it, and in the 60s, right up until maybe right till almost the end of the 60s, 68, 69, we'd have full crowds, full the women's section was filled, the men's section was filled on the high holidays.
Would you have bat mitzvahs for the girls, or was that
okay? That's the Schmucklers. Before I forget, Bobby, where was Evelyn's bat mitzvah?
She was bat mitzvah at Lubavitch on Tacoma because of the parking and the space shortage. Okay,
so one of the Schmuckler girls had her bat mitzvah. I don't remember who it was. She had the first one. I had mine at Beth Abraham on a Saturday night in a blizzard.
In February.
You read from the Torah?
No.
Yeah. No. Okay. So what
I did, that was the only time, because it was after Shabbos, men and women sat together because it wasn't a real service.
Okay.
I did a speech in Hebrew and in English.
Okay.
I chanted the Aseret Hadibrat. I said the blessing, bless up B'divrei Torah, which is what you say before you study Torah. So I chanted the 10 Commandments, and I made Havdalah, and that was my bat mitzvah.
Okay.
So I was the only, as far as I know, Schmuckler, and I wasn't there, so I don't know what she did. But I don't know if anyone did a bat mitzvah after I did in the stage that we were growing up, like in the 60s and 70s.
No, you were the only one. And I think Jeff Shapiro had his bar mitzvah there. I don't know about his brothers.
Jeff would have been way before us because Jeff.
Well, Jeff was about 58.
He's like 10 years.
Really early 60s. Like I remember because I was downstairs, so he must have been 13. I must have been like 3, maybe.
Really young.
I remember being downstairs, being in the basement because he was upstairs. But
but the
Noah had his there,
and
Roger had his there.
Noah Shapiro.
Yeah. Noah and Roger had theirs there.
And
assume
Jimmy,
Jimmy did, but I don't remember if Jimmy had one or not even.
I don't remember Jimmy. I don't know what, and I don't think Faith did either.
No, none of the sisters did, as far as I know.
So what was the total membership, during that period? I mean, how many families would you say you had?
That's a
I
tough
know.
one.
Pardon
Yeah,
me?
You see,
That's-
on a Saturday, so on a
Yeah.
Saturday morning during the 60s, you'd have maybe 3 or 4 women, me and Marilyn and my sisters, and maybe a kid here or a kid there.
the
And maybe-
conflicts.
And
Remember the
Cufflick, yeah,
kids?
the 2 Cufflick girls,
The
and up
girls?
to a point. And you'd have maybe 20,
About 20.
20 to
Yeah.
25 men and 3 or 4 women. We didn't have a lot of women.
But I'm talking about membership, people that,
Well, that's hard to say because we never had what we do now. I mean, membership was a high holiday appeal. That was it. There weren't.
That was the Paul
mean-
Nidre.
okay.
I suppose you could say we had maybe
Maybe.
30 regular families in attendance. Give or
What kind
take.
of, yeah, I mean, the Yellen family was
You know, you had
yeah,
the Yellens. You could consider the Lanskys. They were coming for a while.
the
So
Wallens.
the Wallens
Wallens
family, Steinhorn.
Prince.
What was it? I mean, how did the merger between Beth Israel and Beth Abraham, how did that affect the complexion of the congregation?
That was before our
That was
time.
a little before us. I think it was just a matter
That was
of
57.
Yeah, I think my understanding is though that the building we're in now was a little more less orthodox than Beth Abraham down the street.
Okay.
I mean, Beth Abraham down the street had a mixed
Balcony.
a separate seating, and the women sat above.
Yeah.
And so when it merged, it was really more of a matter of probably survival than. But the dynamic didn't. I can't speak to how that changed. I wasn't.
Okay.
You weren't around yet.
Yeah,
No, I understand. I was just wondering how maybe, if you had any inkling as to how the complexion of this, the congregation changed as a result of the merger.
Good
No,
question. No, I don't really know. I mean,
Okay.
it seemed to go smoothly as far as, but by that time I was already, till I knew what was going on. It wasn't until the early 60s till I could remember anything.
Yeah,
Did you have a
the same
rabbi at
for
the
me.
time?
We never, I have a correction in your PDF. Kat, you had someone by the name of Katz, Moshe Katz, I think he was not a rabbi, he was a reverend.
Oh.
No,
Remember?
that was, Katz was a rabbi. Spitz was the reverend.
I thought Katz was a rabbi, are you
He
sure?
was the last rabbi we had. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm pretty
I
sure
wasn't
about
sure.
that. Double check, but I'm pretty sure because it was Reverend Spitz. He was the showcase.
Spitz.
But Rabbi
Yeah.
Katz was the last official rabbi.
Okay, I didn't remember. I remember his
And that lasted,
kids.
and that was, I have in the timeline the 60s. I mean, was he, when did he phase out?
He went-
64, maybe? 63?
Katz left to go to Muncie because I guess when his kids were starting to get older, there
Was that
wasn't.
it? Okay.
Katz left, I think, to go to Muncie, New York, because the day school only went up to 6th grade at that time, and I think he wanted more for his kids
Right.
as they were getting older. His daughter was Judy, and I think his son was Mordecai.
Oh, I forgot all about them.
And-
Get kids.
So after Katz left, Spitz came,
Yeah.
and he lived in North Buffalo. He had a long walk.
Yeah,
I
he lived
remember
on
how
Linden.
old.
He lived
Yeah.
on Linden, about 5 doors down from Colvin, more
Really?
Where did
towards
he live?
Parkside.
Yeah.
That's good memory.
Did-
Wow.
I
did you-
remember that.
Did you have
And
a
then
canteen?
when-
Oh, go ahead.
Bobby, I don't remember when Spitz left, but I remember, or why he left, but I
Oh.
remember as soon as you were bar mitzvah, you started doing
Right.
all the Torah reading.
Right. He left about a year before my bar mitzvah. So he left around late 69, mid 69, maybe even 70. He left because he was a shochet, and the place in Buffalo, the Elm Street Market, whatever it was, closed. And so he went off to, I want to say Omaha. I really do. I'm not 100% certain, but
I
he
don't
left.
remember.
But he
that.
left because of work. I mean, all the kosher butchers were sort of
Yeah, going.
declining in the market area, and so he went there. And so then I learned my bar mitzvah and took on the Torah reading about 71 when I was.
You were amazing.
Where did you learn how to read the Torah?
Oh, that's a interesting story enough. So I'll try to abridge it.
Okay, please.
I had my bar mitzvah coming up in November of '71, so I decided to learn the Torah reading because we didn't have anyone. I thought, well, it would be cool to take on, and I didn't know how much work was involved. It just looked like, it was like looking at the trumpet. Oh, it looks like shouldn't be too hard a thing to handle, you know. So what they did back then, Cantor Markowitz, they didn't teach it at Kadima. So Cantor Markowitz over at Lubavitch on Tacoma was where I had my bar mitzvah, but they recorded it. You know, it was just here it is. Here I'm verbatim. You know, you just learned it off the recording.
Right. That's the way I did it.
So
Sure.
After I had my bar mitzvah, I went back to the notes that I learned and put it, or the recording, and put it to the notes so that I could learn the trope. And then there were 2 or 3 that I was missing that I sort of picked up over time. You know, I asked Cantor Gildar one day, asked him, how does this note go? You know, and so I took it on from there.
Well, how about Hebrew without the vowels?
Well, that's because I went to Kadima.
Okay.
So I have a real good foundation of Hebrew grammar and reading. So my Hebrew reading was great.
Okay.
It's just they never taught anything. I don't think they ever did.
They never
when
taught.
it came to bar mitzvah or bat mitzvahs, that was your family's responsibility.
Right.
Yeah, Cantor Markowitz was the one who taught me also.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, somewhere on Facebook, somebody put a snapshot of him. Maybe it was from the Kadima book. I don't know. With all his kids, I have it. I can even send it on to you. If you want to see it, Marilyn, I can send it on to you. It's from the.
I've seen it. No,
okay.
Yeah, no, because I'm friends with. I was friends with Joel until he passed away.
Did Joel pass away?
Oh yeah, a few years back. He had, I think, I'm not sure if it was ALS or MS. Yeah, it's horrible.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Where was he living?
Yeah. He was in DC. He was writing, like he was like a theater and movie critic, and he really did well.
I didn't know that. I'm sorry to hear that.
So yeah, so I'm friends with Bruce and Stuart.
Oh, okay.
On Facebook.
What's the last name? What was his last name?
Markowitz.
Joel Markowitz.
Cantor Markowitz was a chazan at Davasach and Lubavitch. He married my parents. He did my bat mitzvah, and he was one of the people who married me also.
Yeah, he was a good egg. Yeah, I did. Joel was in your grade in Kadima, right? Yeah.
So, what other, besides services, obviously, what other kinds of activities did you folks do?
That was it. That was it. We had Friday night services and Saturday morning services with Kiddush. And then like the evening before a holiday started, like the night before Passover, the night before Sukkot, we would have services the night before, the night of. And when the holiday ended, we did not have services. There was no weekday minyan. You went to Avasach. If you had to say Kaddish during the week, you went to Avasachim.
Or wherever, right?
So no book club, no movie group, no Hanukkah party.
No, there was no social.
I mean, later on, maybe in the 80s, we might have a pouring party downstairs.
And we had Megillah reading.
Yeah, but that was about it. There was no other.
Right.
There was no social event.
So you really didn't. You didn't. I mean, would you say you didn't really integrate into the rest of the Jewish community? You were kind of like your own little island.
Pretty much, but I mean,
yeah.
I mean, we weren't solicited by the Federation. We had no real connection to the JCC or
we were independent.
Yeah. I mean, we never had any connection with them. I mean,
that's probably pretty typical for the time. I mean, nowadays, we have meetings between the synagogue presidents, and we do inter synagogue activities.
But the only interaction we had, and this was something in my notes, that students, but this was when growing up, there really was much of a Hillel until they got their own building on Elmwood Avenue. Students from both state would come to our shul for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur.
That's another thing that's kind of gone by the wayside.
Yeah. And any students that were still left at Nila would come to our house to break fast, and eventually they became my babysitters.
I grew up in a college. I grew up in a college town, Potsdam, New York. 2 colleges, Potsdam State and Clarkson, and the students would participate in Friday night services. We had to put out extra chairs for the holidays. They're very involved in the synagogue. Now they still have a synagogue there. There's no participation at all from the students. It's just,
Yeah, but they would
world.
always come. We always would have a nice group of students that would come to the shul.
Yeah.
And
We had
some-
Hillel. Occasionally, I know one time they asked to borrow a Torah or something, but it's not like we were in constant communication with them. This may even be after, and the same thing with SJ. I mean, SJ, Rabbi, Schumann, Rabbi Schumann, you know, we did a few things with him. This is after I think you'd left already, Marilyn.
yeah, because I left in
So,
81.
As a matter of fact, just for your notes, Marty, they have one of our Torahs that we have on loan to them, just so you know.
Oh, really? On loan?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
I
that's
mean,
interesting.
at some point, if you ever speak with Rabbi Schumann, you may want to just ask him if he still remembers that. You know,
Oh,
I mean,
wait a minute. Rabbi, I'm sorry, Rabbi, is he still around? He's still here?
well, he's younger than I am by about 10 years. So, I mean, I assume he's still conducting services on SJ. I think he's not a full-time rabbi. I think he's in his
No, I don't
family.
think I've ever even heard of him.
Well, you know the Schumann family, the three.
Oh, you mean
brothers.
Leslie Kramer Schumann?
Yeah, that's either a cousin or whatever.
Oh, okay.
And so you may, at some point bring it up with the membership. I don't think we want the Torah back.
Well, they're probably not even using it. I mean, at this point, they're probably not using it. I don't think they have
but it's just the same. We want to make sure that if anything happens,
right? No, absolutely.
SJ knows that it's our property. It was, and Rabbi Schumann knows if there's a problem, you can certainly call me because I'm the one that negotiated with him and made sure about insurance and so forth.
Did they have? I mean, it was just a Torah. We didn't give them any kind of an ark or anything like that.
No. And they've been good about it. They've I think one time he even had made sure that I think he had updated it to make sure it was kosher and everything, which is fine. But I just assume we.
All right. Well, I mean, it's not something that's really, pressing need of ours.
No, just in case SJ folds or something, we don't want the.
Right. That's true. That's true. Just to say, we just want to see how the Torah is, how it's doing.
I just don't want him to forget that where, if something happens, it's.
Right. No, it's a concern for sure.
Quick question, Bobby. Quick question. Where are you living now?
I'm in Seminole, Florida.
Seminole. Okay.
Outside of St. Pete. You can come and visit.
I thought it was St. Pete. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, Marty. I just couldn't remember.
No, it's
Sorry.
okay.
Why don't you come visit?
Were you connected with a synagogue or a federation or something there? What was the? What you went to Florida?
Oh yeah. Originally I went to school in Minnesota, and then when while I was in Minnesota, I happened to see this job opportunity in Seminole for a Torah reader, and so when I just was horsing around, I mean literally horsing around, I just responded and they called me back, and it so happened they needed like a executive director for finance and facilities, and I was like, all right, sounds like I fit the bill. So I came down, they interviewed me, they hired me, and I'm just doing Torah reading now, and I just stayed on.
No, I'm sorry. Where do you do the Torah reading?
At congregation CBI, Congregation B'nai Israel in St. Petersburg. And if you Google them, they do Zoom services, so you can hit the link and see me in action if you ever want to.
Is there like a Jewish? Is there a Jewish section of St. Petersburg?
Nah, it's very scattered.
I thought maybe like Clearwater, maybe. I don't know. We have.
No, I mean there's just pockets, but not like Amherst or anything like that.
Yeah.
I mean there's like 2 synagogues in Clearwater. There's a Reform and us in St. Petersburg. There's one, and then you start getting into the suburbs of Palm Harbor.
Do you ever go to is it Beth Israel? There's Beth Shalom in Sarasota. You ever go there?
I've been by there, and I think I actually met their rabbi at one time. I met their rabbi. It was Rabbi what's his name? Warbo was there.
Yeah, right, from Buffalo.
Yeah,
he's not there anymore.
He's gone now. I think he
Right.
went to another shul, but I know where it is. I know where it is. I've been intrigued.
My parents used to go there, and we would visit them. We would go there. Actually, it's a really nice synagogue.
They got a great Buffalo contingency. As a matter of fact, I think Schumann's go there, among other people, because I had spoke to a cantor that was retired from there, and he was telling me, he started flinging out some Buffalo names.
Yeah.
I know these people.
Well, we're going out there for 2 weeks. We're going to be in Sarasota.
Oh, call me. I'll meet you up for dinner. Or
Yeah, well,
something.
actually, we're only going to be in Sarasota for a week. Then we're going to be in visiting my wife's sister in Delray Beach.
When are you going to there?
Pardon me?
When are you going to be in Delray?
Delray, we're going to be the first part of March.
Oh, okay.
Oh, no, February. I'm sorry, the first part of February.
Okay, because I'm going to be in Delray in about 2 or 3 weeks, and then I'm going to visit my cousin who lives out there.
I'll be in Miami winter break.
Well, maybe I can meet you down there. Give me a
I'll
heads
give you-
up.
I'll give you info. I'll send you email.
Yeah, it'd be fun to drive because then I'm not too far from my cousin. I got a good excuse to travel. But Marty, if you're in Sarasota, certainly give me a heads up. It's only an hour away.
Yeah, I'm not sure what our schedule is going to be like. We were planning on going to services at in Sarasota. I mean, maybe you can come into Sarasota and join us at well, you're going to be reading Torah probably
on Saturday. But yeah, give me a heads up if you got time. I'll meet you. If you don't have time, I understand. You got a lot to do and only a week to do it. I'm not insulted. I understand. I hear that often.
Sure, or you can come to Buffalo. You know,
well,
Buffalo's wonderful in February.
Doesn't everybody want to go to Buffalo in February?
That's right.
When my mom was still alive, when we moved to Providence, we were in Buffalo the week that they got the 6 feet. Let's see, Daniel, my son had just turned, he was in 2nd grade, I think. So about 20 years ago, we got in on us. We were there Sunday to Sunday during winter break. And it started like a cold rain Sunday night. And Monday it started snowing. And by the end of the week, it was 6 feet. And that was by Weinberg. My mother was living in Weinberg then. Right. And it stopped snowing Christmas Day. It was the year the first Harry Potter movie came out. It was the only time I bumped into family because you couldn't drive. How my mother's aide managed to get in because there was actually a ban on driving in the city that year.
That's funny.
Well, let's get back to Beth Abraham.
Yeah.
So Marilyn, you said your father was the president of the congregation?
Yes.
And when was that?
My dad was vice president when Joe Sapowich was president. And when Joe couldn't, when he became too ill to really to stay on as president in the mid-60s, my dad was president until they started, I'm trying to think. I got married in 81 and he must have still been president until maybe mid 80s. Bobby, you would have a better sense of.
When did your dad was about 90 when he stopped coming because of his mobility issues.
Yeah.
So
my dad died.
President right till the day he left, actually.
What was his name? What was his name?
Max. M-A-X.
Okay. And then Bobby, was your dad president after that, or?
Well, that's sort of the way it worked. My dad was sort of vice president. We had Ralph Seligman with an S, Seligman, as a treasurer. And these guys, there was no meetings, there was no board of directors. I mean, everybody just sort of had a voice and just sort of,
donated when they needed money.
Yeah, or repairs. Somebody just sort of got together at Kiddush or something and tossed it around.
Oh, wow.
So Mr. Spital, Joe Sapowich was like the de facto president until he just stopped coming and passed away. Max just became president, no vote or anything. And my dad just stayed as vice president. And it just sort of went that way till your dad couldn't come, and then my dad just took over. And really, Seligman was still a treasurer right up until the day he left.
When was that? When did Ralph start coming?
Let's see, probably around the late 90s, early 2000s.
That long, really?
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't coming as much, but he still was treasurer because by that point, his wife had passed away, and I can even be more specific on the dates if you need them. Maybe a drop longer. And then I remember going to his house, getting the checkbook and a few other details and turning it over to Steve Yellen. And then subsequently after Steve, Lloyd.
Yeah.
But he was there. As a matter of fact, he was he still maintained a bit of activity right up until that point.
So I'm going to get into a little bit more of a qualitative area. So if you could just tell me what Beth Abraham meant to you in terms of your personal identity, growing up being Jewish, whatever. Is there something special about your experience at Beth Abraham that you might want to share?
It was for me, it was my whole life. And when, for example, Ein Keloheinu and Adon Olam, Evelyn, Bobby's sister, would stand in the middle of the bima where, and then Bobby would stand. Bobby stood here, I stood here. And then when Bobby's younger brother started coming, we would schlep him up. And the three of us or five of us, whatever, we would lean Ein Keloheinu Adon Olam. Bobby, you started doing Anim's Mirag.
Yeah.
For my birthday, my mother always made extra stuff for my birthday, and people would sing happy birthday to me. I remember as kids decorating the sukkah when we sold tickets, quote unquote tickets, before the Sunday before Rosh Hashanah. The three of us would clean down, we would all wipe down the benches. For Simchas Torah, we would have remember the flags with the apples on top.
Oh yeah, we did that too. Yeah, sure. With those weapons that the kids had with the spears.
Yes, we would go to. We went to Chasen's, and which was the Jewish bookstore. I remember going with my parents, and we would always pick up the flags. Setting up Kiddush with the three of us would set up Kiddush with the herring and the fish balls and putting the tam-tams. And Irving Yellen, may he rest in peace, always, because he was a pediatrician, he always brought up like an envelope full of toys that the doctors would give out. And I would have to wait until your father brought you guys. And as soon as you came, we would run downstairs and divvy up these little toys, which we thought were like the most greatest things in the world.
Little troll dolls and the
troll dolls
office and stuff. Yeah.
And I remember we for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, we always had either a chazan from New York or Rochester, and we didn't have a guest room, so they would stay in my bedroom and I slept on the couch. But there was a rabbi we had, I think, from New York, and it was the Kippur War. I'll never forget. Just remember this. His daughter was in Israel. Everyone who came to shul that morning knew that the war had broken out, and we didn't want to tell the chazan about the war or until after davening, so he wouldn't get so upset that his daughter was in Israel during the Yom Kippur War. And I remember Evelyn and I were walking to, there was that fruit store near Elmwood and Forest, and we were looking to see if there were any newspapers for sale, to see if we could find any news out. So I remember that. And
on Elmwood and Forest. It's Goodbar now.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a given.
Yeah.
It was a given in our household.
I remember I brought my.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
You're kind of breaking up there a little bit, at least on my computer.
No. For a second. Oh. Yeah. I went. When Mr. Donut opened next door, we would have the windows open because it was still warm out for Yom Kippur, and the smell of the donuts wafting into
we have that with
shul.
Mr. Pizza.
Oh, you got Mr. Pizza, I moved up a step.
And
Mr. Donut was a much better neighbor.
We have air conditioning now, so it's not
I saw that.
And I'm sure, Marty, you know our claim to fame that Jack Yellen wrote the song "My Yiddish Mama."
Now, what's Jack Yellen's connection to Beth Abraham?
He was a member. The whole Yellen family was a member.
Did he live in there? I know he lived in Springfield for a while. Did he live in Buffalo?
No, he lived in Springfield, but he would always come to shul. And I remember another Jack Yellen story besides My Yiddish Mama, is if the chazan started going on, like for Rosh Hashanah especially, Jack Yellen would come up to my father, and if they were going on too long, Jack Yellen would go up to my father and say, "We got to finish this up, and let's get going. I'm hungry."
I got to tell you,
Rabbi
Masses for a long time. for a
He
number
led
of years.
services.
I even hired him, seriously, I even had him on deck for 2 or 3 years after you were already gone. I still was a 93 and 94, and maybe even 95. He was still coming on high holidays.
Wow. And I remember bringing my B'nai B'rith chapter, BBG. I guess I was religious vice president or something. And my whole chapter came to Beth Abraham on a Friday night. And then we had dinner for everybody at my house on Friday night.
Okay.
So like my whole life basically revolved around the shul until I got into high school. And
how did you come by, your family come by way of the shul? Were they lived in the neighborhood, or they just,
my parents got married in 52. And I guess my father was a member before they got married. I'm not sure where my father lived in Buffalo before he got married.
why did he choose Beth Abraham as opposed to some other synagogue?
Wasn't he living on Richmond by that point?
No, because they bought the house. When they got married, they were living my parents got married in 52. They lived in an apartment on Delaware and maybe Utica and that's when they bought the house in 52. So where my father was living before they got married, I think he was a member already, because my mother grew up on the east side and then she moved to Lovering. So she did not belong there. It was my father who went there when he moved to Buffalo. So I'm not sure where my parents lived. My grandfather had a store on the end of Main Street.
Well, was your dad part of the Pine Street Shul when he was younger?
I was just about to say, he might have been a member of Pine Street for a little while.
I think he was, because
with Joe Lansner.
As a side note, there was these guys from the Pine Street Shul. Dr. Irving, actually, Dr. Yellen told me this story. There was a group of guys that were interested back in the 20s and 30s in operating and going to invest in a casino, in a boat, like in a showboat casino. Yeah. So there was some of the Yellens and a few other families, and your grandfather, not your dad, but your grandfather. And so they all went down to Biloxi. This is a true story that was told to me. I'm not improvising at all. So they all went down there. Dr. Irving told me this. They all went down there and they decided to invest, except your grandfather, who said, what kind of casino? I see people wearing overcoats. And so he didn't invest. And they all lost the bundle except for your grandfather.
But speaking of my grandfather, Bobby, I'm glad you remember it, because in the Saranac Shul, my grandfather donated part of the Aron HaKodesh. So if you go to Saranac, because we took our kids there years ago, it says Moshe Spitelny. Yeah. I can send you a picture of it. He donated the Aron HaKodesh. So whether my father belonged to Saranac or my grandfather did, but he definitely donated it because it's still there.
Right. And in a segue to that, Marty, Marilyn's right. Her dad, he was a gentleman, and he wasn't verbose or anything. He never said a lot, but he took a lot of abuse just by virtue of being president. I mean, being president, if there was anything that went right, no credit, but when something was not, and he took all sorts of, as you can imagine, I know, and people weren't always nice about it. I mean, he took a lot of abuse. He took it without ever being vindictive or mean about it. I don't know if he went home and kicked the dog or something, but he never was mean at shul about it. I never saw him but once lose his temper, and that was with me.
What? My father would never do that. There was only one family story that I really got chewed out for, and I was innocent, but that doesn't involve Beth Abraham. That's just a family thing. But I only remember being yelled at. But yeah, my dad was a very quiet man. But your dad was a mensch too. I remember coming in with the Brooks suits.
Oh, yeah. And that was always a source of contention, because we would, my dad always ran late. I don't know why. It was a source of family problems with my mom and me. I mean, we were all sitting there on a Saturday morning at 8:30, dressed and ready to go, and yet we only lived half a mile away. It wasn't like we were coming. Even when we lived in the town of Tonawanda, it was only a 15-minute drive. And so we were only a mile away, and we drove, and we wouldn't get there till 10:15. And geez, I remember Max yelling one time, we'd come in and there was 10:15, and I'd shake hands with her. I was only 12, 10, and Max yelling, just looking at me, and he was intimidating, saying, tell your father we start services here at 9 a.m. And you didn't want to mess with this guy. And I was like, sorry.
Yeah. What's Max Yellen's relationship to either Lori and or Steve? And
Uncle. Yeah.
And then Jack Yellen was also part of the.
Right. There were 5 brothers.
Sam.
There were 5 brothers. Steve's father was Sam. Richard's father was Maury, which is Lori's father-in-law. There was Jack Yellen, Irving Yellen, and Hiram.
Yeah.
And a sister who lived out of town.
Do you know if is there a yard side panel for Jack Yellen in the synagogue?
Yeah, they're all up there. Everyone's name.
I know there's a bunch of them, but I just don't remember making that connection.
Yeah.
And I never got her. I'm sorry.
I said all the names are hanging up there. They're all up to date and current. I mean, for us, the family connection was that it was just a given. We went to Kadima school, and at the time of Kadima, all the big families were major contributors. So the Yellens were, and we had the Lansky family there, and a few Marilyn's father. So it was a given, and you got to remember the school was still in its first couple years, and so here we are, sort of not a lot of. We weren't kid heavy, so to speak. We had, Marilyn, me, my sister, my brother, and an occasional kid here and there, and so forth. So we'd go to school. It was just a given on a Friday night and Saturday. We'd have temple. We'd have the holidays, and we would be there. And on, it was just really that simple. And occasionally, as my dad took activities, it wouldn't be unusual that we went down on in late August or something to pick up a guy with a beard and a hat to audition him for the high holidays. So off we'd go to the Greyhound bus terminal, or occasionally have somebody to our house for dinner that was, traveling through, or a friend of the family, or bringing our families, or friends to services. It was just sort of a given, I mean, it was just, there really wasn't any wiggle room. My folks went out of town. It wasn't like I had a day off. Marilyn's father came and picked us up. It wasn't like, oh, good, I can watch cartoons. It was like, no, you're going to shul, and Mr. Sally picked us up.
And if my parents were invited to a bar bat mitzvah and I wasn't, I'd end up at your house and we always have peanut butter. Your mother would always make, and I never had crunch. It was the first time I had crunchy peanut butter was at your house.
I mean, and so it was a given. And the thing is that, I can't speak about the other shuls at that time because, we weren't that active with them, but in our shul, everyone was not only like a mentor, but, they were also your pseudo parent. Just about everyone. And so, it wasn't unusual if we were making noise to get reamed out by somebody in the basement or or told, that we're going to be doing stuff. So I had a lot of, I really thought about that over the last few weeks, that I had a lot of a good mentorship that kept me interested, my interest. I don't think a lot of 13-year-old kids had the key to the synagogue, but I did.
You became
it really was a second home for you.
It really was, yeah.
And,
so, anything else? You want to? I have. Let me look at my list here. Let me make sure I got everything that I wanted to talk about. Families, Orthodox. Bobby? Did your family have any connection with Beth Israel at all?
I think my dad went there. In other words, he went to the other shul before he came over here. I remember that. I know that, but
I know that.
that was. Like you said before, I'm not sure. His father was there, and then when they merged, I remember everyone coming here. But like I said, that was just a couple of years before my time.
Yeah.
So he was. Just as a few notes, I can sort of, bring you up to date that in the early 70s started the decline. You know, we had people, and like we had the Shapiro family, and right off the top, you know, there were 5 members, and so in the early 80s, like their kids went, you know, had to change schools, and so they moved to Amherst and out of town and so forth.
Yeah.
Mel, the father, passed away. And so started this decline in the late 70s. As the decline was going, you know, people were moving and passing away. We had a resurgence. We had a small resurgence for about, I don't know, a number of years. We had some members that we brought in, the Galperin brothers.
And Sydney Siegel.
The resurgence when? This was in the 70s or the 80s?
Well, in the 70s, we had a resurgence. In the early 70s, some new members came to make
Kenny
up for some of those.
Dauber.
Pardon me?
Kenny Dauber.
Yeah, and so we had this group of younger people that came in. Dr. Back, Nate Back moved back to Middlesex, and Bob Alt. And so we had a whole mess of people that moved.
And Zisquit, remember the lawyer?
Donald Zisquit. Yeah.
They moved in.
Yep. And so we had this resurgence
And
that
really
lasted for about 3 or so years before of younger people, you know, which when I say younger, Marty, their kids were still maybe just a little before high school.
So who would lead service? Who would lead services? You didn't have a rabbi at this point.
No, it was the same thing. So in the 70s, the cantor was gone, Reverend Spitz was gone.
Oh, that's right. You did all the way up to
and so I was reading Torah and Jeff,
Howard and Jeff
and Howard Shapiro. Ultimately, after we stopped hiring rabbis, you know, or holiday rabbis, Jeff and Howard would lead the high holiday services. And they must have done that for about a good 10 or 12 years, I think, you know, until they moved out of the area. And so then, like, we had this resurgence, and that came and went. And then during the late 80s and into the early 90s is really when we hit the pre-Irwin tough times. That's when I mean, and this isn't really meant to blow my own horn. I'm not, that's not my intent, but there were a number of years where the Hurdle Avenue Shul had closed in the mid 80s.
Anshe Emes
Anshe Emes. Anshe Emes. Across from next door to what used to be Mighty Taco.
You wouldn't recognize it now. It's painted black.
Yeah, they're going to regenerate that into some.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But so we gained a few members that sort of kept us afloat. But those members, I would have to. I mean, we had Lester Burrs on, and Ida comes on the high holidays, or she used to.
Yeah, she still does.
But so her father would come and he could drive, but then I would have to pick up 2 or 3 of these other guys, Julian Chertoff and Lieberman on a Friday night, and some other guys, and so I was pretty much a one-man army there. You know, we'd have 10 or 11 people, maybe 12, which I brought 3 or 4. I'd have my kids who were just toddlers in the back. And
okay, excuse me, I'm sorry. This is just for Saturday morning or for
just
Friday
for Saturday morning. Friday night, we still treaded water okay. For some reason on Friday night, we had a different crew. It was just on Fridays, and my dad would make some phone calls, so we'd have some old-time members that would show up just on Friday. So we did all right there. Rabbi Podette would come on a Friday, and the Fogels would come. They would come, believe it or not. And so, but for Saturdays, we really hit the tough times until like you referenced in the notes, Marty, that at that point they made a decision to go conservative, count women. About that time, I went over to B'nai Shalom to read, but I still led the high holidays. And so they were treading water, but more and more people were leaving. And, you know, and that's about the time when you saw we need a keyboardist, we're starting a new idea. And that's when things turned around, you know.
Well, yeah. I mean, how do you feel? I mean, this is maybe my last question I'll ask. I mean, what do you think about the state of Congregation Beth Abraham? It's obviously very different from when you were growing up, and obviously.
Oh, me personally?
Yeah. What do you think?
Oh, Marty, I've been delighted by it. Are you kidding? Because the truth of the matter is, it's the community, and this is just a philosophy of mine. It isn't my, I'm not here to theologize. It's just the community drives what happens, you know. And so you have a whole mess of temples that died out, which is fine, you know, like the Pine Street Temple. They were going to worship in an Orthodox manner, and then when they didn't have enough people. They just closed. There was no wiggle. That was it. But in our temple, we've always been flexible. I mean, we merged. We went to conservative. I mean,
Remember the time on Friday night? I don't know how kosher this was, but when we had 9 on a Friday night, we opened the curtain and we counted the Torah as a 10th person.
I mean, occasionally we were flexible. Well, of course, it's non-legitimate, but we've been flexible, and so that the community has a void that's filled in a building that's over 100 years old, and that on a Friday night it gets 3-4 dozen people and fills the place up on the high holidays. Are you kidding? I think that's wonderful. I mean, sure, it's not the Orthodox full musaf, but I'm still just fine with it. I think it's great. I love it when I can get on and I'm around and able to do Zoom, or I keep trying to arrange my trips when I get into Buffalo to come on a Friday night, and it's only happened once in the last about 16 months.
I'll tell you one thing about Beth Abraham. I mean, and I'm guilty of this also. People didn't know that it existed. Either they thought it was a church or Messianic Jewish thing or something. And now we've kind of integrated ourselves into the community, and people very much know who we are, where we are, and
oh yeah. I mean, I think it's. I think it's.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but that's,
oh no, I think it's.
It's great.
Thing.
Do you know the Lipkins? Andy and Amy Lipkin, I think is her last name.
Yeah.
Marty.
Yes.
So Amy's sister was my husband's boss in Providence, and I got to know Amy and Andy.
Oh yeah. I remember she had a sister in Providence because our daughter went to school in Providence.
Yeah, so she would fill me in, and when I started one time, I remember when the Jewish Review was still going, and I saw your ad, and I go, oh my! I started screaming. My husband got scared. I go, oh my God, Beth Abraham is still, because I kind of lost track once my parents passed away. My mom, well, when my parents moved to Weinberg, they couldn't go anymore, so I kind of lost track. So the fact that the building is not a church, that it's still going stronger than ever, like Bobby. I mean, granted, I'm like him, that I still, part of me misses the part that it's not like it was when we were growing up. But the fact that you've revived it, where that's so rare these days. Yeah, so many shuls in Buffalo have closed, and the fact that the little shul that could.
Yeah.
Well, I just did I have to answer this call after in a minute or two, but I just did a tour, if you will. There's a Jewish youth leadership group of 10 kids that came to the synagogue and to get a tour of the shul. And we started in the basement. I said, okay, now we're going to go upstairs. And I said, when you walk into the room, I want you to breathe in the history. I want you to look at the yahrzeit panels, look at the dates on them. And so this combination of the old and the new. I mean, we don't forget about what you folks did and the history of the synagogue. I mean, every time I step into the synagogue, it's nice that we have kind of the best of both worlds. I appreciate you're taking the time to do this, and it's kind of fill in the blanks a little bit. But this is wonderful. I just so appreciate it, and it's great to meet you and to see you again, Bobby.
Oh, good to speak to you, Marty.
And we'll talk again, I'm sure.
Okay, take care. Be well. Thank you, Marty.
Thank you.